Hey everyone, thanks for clicking the video. So I wanted to react today from a Browns fan perspective on the PFF's top 101 players from the 2020 season. This is from a list that I'll put in the description below. You can click and check out yourself. From a Browns fan perspective, I wanted to react to the Browns players that made it. First and foremost, according to the list, there are 7 Browns players that they had rated as the top 101 players of the 2020 season. I think that's awesome. I think as a Browns fan, we should be ecstatic over that. I'd be pretty thankful and grateful in the past if we had 2 players that made the top 100, but now that we have 7, I think that's just ridiculous in an awesome way. So I wanted to go through the list and kind of pull my opinions on if their placement's good, if it makes sense that they're on the list based on their season, and just go from that. So starting from the highest, or the lowest ranked, I should say, and then working their way up to the highest. 7th for us, for the lowest ranking in the top 101 was J.C. Treader, ranked 80th. And I think at 80th, that's a fair spot. I'm actually kind of surprised that he made the list. I thought he had a good season. I shouldn't say that. He definitely had a good season. I shouldn't say I'm surprised he made the list. I'm actually kind of surprised that, as you'll see, that a lot of our offensive line made the list, which I think is awesome. That shows how well of a unit they played this year, especially since we're the top ranked unit according to PFF. So this does make sense. It's interesting though, because I thought J.C. Treader, based on how his contract is and the plans of the team moving forward, and them drafting Nick Harris, Andrew Berry drafting Nick Harris as the rookie center who played 2 games for us, I believe. I don't think any at center. Pretty sure J.C., correct, I could be wrong, but played all 16 or all games this year, including the playoffs. So 80th, I'm kind of I would say I'm pretty happy about that. I think that would make sense then, in the standpoint of the offensive line in general playing very well. He wasn't the flashiest offensive lineman we had this year, which we'll probably discuss a few of those names in a little bit later in this list. But he definitely held his own ground. We never heard his name for the wrong reason, which is usually why offensive line, if you don't hear their name, that means they're doing their job very well, and that's a great thing. So yeah, 80th on the list for J.C. Treader, I think that makes sense. Second to last on our list, so going down the list, which means that they're improving in ranking, we actually have Jack Conklin at 62nd. And in my opinion, this one, I think he is very low for how well he played this year. I would argue that Jack Conklin was the unsung hero for the Cleveland Browns, and that free agent pickup from Andrew Berry was probably the best one he did in this offseason. I think that's probably the best player acquisition that he made this offseason, and that's including the draft. There was at least one game, I want to say, that when we played the Steelers earlier in the year, where it seemed like he kind of got destroyed, to be honest. I can't remember how he played well, or how well he played against the Ravens early in the year, but I know the Steelers, he struggled big time against them, and so did our whole offensive line. It's kind of a moot point. But besides that game, I thought Jack Conklin was just playing through the roof this year. You never heard his name. Like, he dominated. I thought he outplayed Jedrick Wills, and that's not a knock on Jedrick Wills. It just showed how well Jack Conklin played. I thought he fit in the new scheme perfectly, and that's obviously a credit to our O-line coach, Bill Callahan. But at 62nd, I thought Jack Conklin's a little bit low. I think he should be a little bit higher. I would actually argue that, excuse me, that he is one of the best players on our team currently, which I think is a good thing, to have a tackle being one of those players. So yeah, third to last on the Browns list, so this is again improving in ranking, at the 58th spot was Jarvis Landry. And I thought he had a great season. I thought the first half he was quiet, as we all know. I don't know if that was a disruptive connection between Baker and him, if he was just trying to get used to the new system, maybe Jarvis was, and Baker for himself. Hate to say it, but maybe the Odell situation of him going down might have helped Jarvis Landry out and Baker to kind of connect a little bit more. 58th, I would say, is respectable, and that kind of makes sense to be. He should be in the top 100. At the second half of the season, I thought he was playing like a Pro Bowler easily. He was making these crazy catches left and right, and he really stood out the last few weeks in the games we needed him. He's an amazing first down conversion player. Playoffs, I thought he played decent. Yeah, so 58th, I'm pretty happy about that. I'm kind of surprised, honestly, that PFF from their standpoint to rank him that high, but I'm happy where he's at. I think it's well deserved. So in the middle of the pack for the Browns players, 46 on the list is Joel Bitonio. I would actually argue that Jack Conklin should be ahead of Joel Bitonio on this list. Let me know what you guys think. I thought Joel played very well this year, but I do remember specifically a few games where he did allow some rushes, and I thought he got pushed back a lot and up into Baker, which, again, from our standpoint, he played excellent, but from how well the offensive line played, relatively speaking, I thought he was one of the weaker players this year. Again, not saying he's bad. I thought he had a great season, but when you compare everyone else to the team, I thought his name he kind of stood out a little bit more in a bad way. So 46, I'm kind of surprised that they have him this high, but nonetheless, I'm very happy about that. I think it's, like I said, well deserved that our offensive line and all the players on the offensive line are getting recognized in the list for PFF. This is a shock to me. So at 45th is Baker Mayfield. Now, I don't think he played that great the first half of the season. I'm not saying that's his fault. I'm not saying that he's a bad player because of that or anything. I just think it took a while for him to get in the groove. Again, we could pull the Odell situation of him going down. Maybe that did help Baker. Who knows? We'll find out probably next year if that's the case, if we decide to keep Odell and not trade him. But I'm really surprised that PFF ranked him that high at 45th. Looking at the list, and again, you guys can check out the list, and I'll put in the description for the link of it. He was like the next quarterback after some pretty good ones that were in the NFL and had a great season this year. So I'm kind of surprised that where they placed him, how high in the list. I know PFF is usually more critical of certain stuff for quarterbacks that would shock me for Baker to do well in their standpoint in their grading system. So that shows that in the second half of the year, he played elite, and I thought he played easily like a top 10 quarterback, and then clearly PFF agrees with that based on their ranking of 45th. So I think that's awesome. Baker Mayfield in general, too. I think this list, I have to double check and see. Maybe you guys can check and see, too. I think it includes the playoff games. I could be wrong with any postseason activity, but I thought Baker played really well in the playoffs. I thought he played good, not great against Pittsburgh, and I thought he played very well against Kansas City. He was the last reason for the team to blame for that loss. I thought he was making critical throws. I mean, he was stepping up in the pocket. He was taking hits. You could tell those happy feet he used to have to like scatter around. He was just holding his ground and just throwing away. So I think that's an incredible good sign. The fact that he played that well in that big of a game against Kansas City, who obviously is a pretty damn darn good, whatever the hell, team in the playoffs. And I thought they don't have the greatest defense, but they still have a good defense in my opinion, and they have enough to kind of like their defense coordinator is very good. I think they do a lot of good disguises and stuff. So the fact that Baker was able to dissect that, I think that shows how good of a player he can be moving forward. 43rd on the list now, we have Myles Garrett. I think for Myles Garrett, that is actually a fair spot. I thought that Myles Garrett had a very good first half of the year. He obviously, we could say in the beginning half of the season, some of those games were won because of him, with the forced turnovers and just big time game plays that help change the direction of the game or help make it, give us possession to win the game. Whether it's forced fumbles or just sacks and pressures, all that stuff. It's pretty clear. I actually think the 43rd's fair. I mean, you could argue that when healthy and all things considered, he's a top 15 player in the NFL easily. You could say top 10 potentially, depending on how you want to rate quarterbacks. The only thing for him was the second half after he had his health issues. You could tell that he got impacted, and he honestly was kind of just there from that standpoint and didn't really bring that much to the table. So you could tell that really impacted him significantly, and that's kind of when Olivier Vernon kind of stepped up, and you could see him kind of taking charge as that number one on the defensive line. But nonetheless, very happy that Myles Garrett's on there. I think no matter what, as long as the guy plays majority of the games in the season, he's an absolute beast, and everyone should recognize that. Yeah, and that leads us to the first top player in the Browns list that made the PFF top 101 player list, and for the 2020 season is Wyatt Teller. And I think that's well deserved. I think he was a beast. It was pretty clear when he missed some games that he was much needed. I mean, the dude is like pancaking people left and right. He is just, you could see him demolish people. I mean, I've never seen an offensive lineman be highlighted that many times in broadcast just because he was so good. And we had Joe Thomas. They would obviously talk about Joe Thomas a lot, but I mean, they're showing these highlights from Wyatt Teller like it's nothing. And the dude just stepped up out of nowhere. And I remember the beginning of the season when all of us Browns fans were wondering, like, what should we do for a guard? And that's going to be the major weak point. And it's pretty cool to see him step up majorly, where he ended up being, honestly, probably, in my opinion, him and Jack Conklin were the two best players in the offensive line this year. And he just tore things up. So I really hope we could look to keep him, and hopefully he stays consistent with that production too moving forward. So yeah, that rounds up the list that the top Browns players made for the PFF 101 players. 2 points of note from this list that I wanted to point out. Honestly, with the J.J. Watt speculation, I thought it was interesting that they actually had him ranked on this list 49th. I'm kind of shocked by that, just based on obviously the sack total is not there. I'm not sure how many games he played this year. Not sure of that on top of my head. But everyone makes the point, especially the national media, how his production's gone down and all that. Yeah, PFF, which is a major grading system for how players do, ranked him still pretty high, which I think is an interesting point of note. And another point of note, too, is that Nick Chubb did not make the list. Now, I'm not really sure if this is due to the few games he missed injury, which could be. But I thought that was interesting that him and Kareem Hunt, I guess, did not make the list. And maybe that's just because they split carries. Like I said, Nick Chubb missed a few games. But and I know running backs in general, they don't really value too much in PFF's grading system. But nonetheless, I thought that was pretty interesting, too. But yeah, no, it's at the end of the day, looking at the list, I wanted to point this out because this came up. This list, I think, was provided in the beginning of February from PFF. And the fact that we have that many players that made the list, I think that's incredible, and that's a great sign moving forward. So hopefully we can add players to that list. I'm hoping that Andrew Berry in particular, not saying he didn't have a good draft last year, it'll be a to-be-determined kind of draft, and obviously Jedrick Wills looks like he'll pan out. But I would love to see some drafted players still make this list, and that way we keep the wheels turning with young guys that can make the list, and we're hopefully not just a team that does well and peaks for 2 years and then explodes and blows up where it gets old, kind of like the Eagles. They're a team that I look at for that standpoint, even the Steelers now to a certain extent. We got to still keep drafting young guys and make sure we draft some young stars that we always keep fresh in the mold for the following years coming forward. But yeah, so just wanted to go through the list of the top Browns players. And yeah, thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll catch you guys later. See you.